All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Martial Praxis. I'm joined again by Carlmichael, my good friend. He's the owner of Ground Game Theory. It's an awesome gym down in Miami, and they focus all their training around doing ecological dynamics based constraints-led approach jiu-jitsu. So really happy to have you on,
Thank you,
and
sir.
excited to get to talk about this stuff again.
Yeah, man. Excited to have it.
So, um, one thing, you know. That you did recently that is pretty interesting is you were involved in a study about load management with athletes. Maybe you could just start by talking a little bit about that. I think it's a really important topic.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wasn't really involved in the study so much as like the analysis after the fact.
Yeah.
So Rob Wilson, who's DeAndre Corbe's strength coach, and Greg Souders, which is his skills coach, obviously,
Hmm.
they basically just recorded DeAndre's readiness metrics leading up to CGI 2, right?
Yeah.
So they looked at they looked at six main metrics. That's really what we focused on. Three of them were like more objective, and then three were more subjective. I did it a while ago, so forgive me if I'm forgetting some of them. But
No
one of them
problem.
was CO2 tolerance. So like,
Yeah. How long you can hold like your breath and the CO2 builds up and how you deal with
well,
it.
I think they did like an exhale test.
Got it.
So like every morning, DeAndre would wake up throughout camp, and he would just take the super deep inhale, and then he would time the exhale, and he would just try to see
Exhale
the
for long.
right, see how long he can exhale for, like till he's breathing like Darth Vader, like shit, like
Yep, yep, yep.
like choking, and then he would just measure. Well, I did the analysis, so like we just looked at I think it was like a 3 month camp. We looked at how that trended over time. That, so CO2 tolerance. We looked at resting heart
Like,
rate,
yeah.
and then heart rate variability.
Okay.
Right. So that was like I think the averages overnight. And then he used, I think, a heart rate monitor for that. And then three subjective metrics were just, we just asked them, how did you feel? How did you feel in terms of mobility? So a self mobility rating, a self sleep rating, a sleep quality rating, and then a self soreness rating. And then we just looked at how that trended over time. And the guy is an absolute monster. I mean, you guys can go and look at this study for free. He It was super consistent across the board. Like he was recovering very well. He was getting a full night of rest every single night with like no hiccups really. There's
Yeah.
one day that there was a hiccup where you saw all of his metrics took a hit, but immediately bounced back and he just kept
Yeah, 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 yeah.
up
Wow,
trying to
that's
heal, like,
interesting.
and he was working out I think like 6 days a week, doing like 100 minutes of live work a day. So I mean, we got to see what it looked like for a top level athlete who
Hmm.
really takes it seriously. What three of their subjective recovery or readiness metrics look like, and three of their objective metrics look like over the course of the camp. So it was pretty interesting because I think it showed that DeAndre is actually different in terms of
Yeah.
how he approaches it.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it shows in how he competes. I mean, he's very focused, and it's very hard to break him. He's human, but he's
Yeah.
very consistent. He's very consistent with how he fights. Um,
Yeah, you don't see a conscious break from him, right?
right.
Like you see like a slow slippage in matches where he loses that like the other person just like gets some advantages in some places and is able to get over on him somehow, but it's not like he just like all of a sudden breaks. Like, the worst example of this is obviously like the Herber Santos, but
Yeah.
that's like the egregious one. But many, many, many athletes have a point in the match or in an exchange where you can see that they visibly sort of give up a little bit or just give up a critical battle, and you can see that he never does that.
Yeah. 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 Have you trained with him before?
No, he wasn't there when I was there.
Yeah, I mean, you could kind of see it when he competes, but his focus, he's very intent throughout so if the game's focus is to fight hands, to get to the legs,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if like you snap him and he falls flat on his face. He's springing back up and he's just fighting hands. Like it doesn't matter what happens.
Yeah.
Nothing could break his focus. He's just focused on the task. Get to hands, get to elbows, get to legs, if that's what
I always think
the
that if I
focus
ever, I'm
is.
like, if I ever go there and I train with him, I have to make sure not to be silly. I heard he hates that. Like,
Yeah, he's very serious, very serious.
it's weird because, I do take my training seriously, but for some reason I sometimes can be silly. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, as long as you train hard and you don't give shit up, whatever. That's it. I trained with him for I did one session with him, which is just like an hour of wrestling, and he just obliterated me for an hour. Um, but yeah, I don't think he cracked a smile until like literally at the end of
Oh
practice.
no.
I kind of looked at him and like kind of laughed because he just fucked me up for 40 minutes live straight, and then he kind of
You're
laughed
like,
back.
come on, be a person.
Yeah, it's all over now, right? You can laugh, right?
So when you were like looking at this stuff, other than obviously recognizing like, hey, this guy's an elite level athlete, whether it sounds like maybe it's a combination of him just being genetically gifted, but then also being incredibly disciplined and focused with certain
Yeah,
practices.
yeah, for sure.
But what were your takeaways? Like, did you get some insight into what those things that he was doing that really worked were, or what did you
What it
come
was
away
really
from
like,
this?
it was really less. We didn't talk so much about like how the training looked,
Yeah.
right? We kind of looked at the high level view of like how many minutes did he get live per week
Yes.
and how
Yeah.
much time did he spend in the weight room. I wasn't part of the camp that Rob put together for him. I didn't
Yeah.
watch it, so I'm just the analysis guy. I was there at the very end. They gave me the data, so I was just looking at the data. So I mean, the only thing I can say I really took away from that is that if you want to be a professional athlete, we are doing way less than what we should be. I mean, we're not
Mhm.
tracking any of these things. We're not taking our sleep seriously. We're not drinking a gallon of water a day. We're not eating our weight in protein. We're not
Mhm.
timing our carbs right. There's so many things
Yeah.
that most of these professional athletes could and really should be doing, but they're not. And I don't think that that's gonna last in the next evolution of
Well,
grappling.
it's already phased out of MMA, right? Like in
Yeah,
in mixed martial arts, we already see like people handling those things correctly. And if you mess up, like even with like Hamzat's last fight, right? Like, that weight cut was a little excessive and it seemed like it took a toll on him. So,
yeah, he's human.
these things are as fighting, as more people get involved in it, and I think jiu-jitsu will probably follow suit. You're gonna have to do these things correctly.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think we're gonna see a lot, the next wave of high level jiu-jitsu competitors, we're gonna see a lot more people like Dorian Olivares where they're just specimens and you
Yeah.
can't slack on your strength and conditioning, your recovery. You can't miss training for date night. Unfortunately, these are things you have to give up as a high level athlete.
Yeah.
Um, and that's really the biggest takeaway from that case study is that he is doing all the things that like Olympians are doing.
Yeah.
Obviously that he doesn't have access to the same resources, but with
Doing
lower
doing the Temu version, the
the
best
Timu
version
version
we
of
can
what they're
do.
doing, and that's really and I run a school, so that was my biggest takeaway. Is like I need to get my guys at least closer and closer to this. I can't push them too much. Not everyone, and even
Well, I
Greg
think
and
some of
Rob say
it's
like they're not they only have one DeAndre. They can't
yeah.
get any of their other guys to commit at that level.
Yeah.
You
But
know,
here's the thing. I think we make a mistake sometimes of being like, okay, we don't have anybody who's going to commit at that level, but that doesn't mean that some of this stuff, like we can just replace things with better practices.
for
Like
sure.
one of the things I've been looking for that I haven't really found yet is like how to do weight cutting properly, like water cut, other style cut, like some really good resources on that, because that's something where I know people are going to do it. It's sort of like almost like risk management or whatever
Yeah,
they call it, like
yeah,
damage control, where it's like, okay, we know you're going to do this. Let's just like not do it in a way that's terrible and going to be deleterious to your performance. So I think with a lot of this stuff, just providing the people who want to train at whatever level access to better information. Like, here's a good example that this is something that Greg really helped me out with was like the polyester fibers and staph right? So the polyester fibers are hydrophobic. Staph like sebum and oils that gets into the polyester fibers in your rash guard, right? And then you end up with something that lasts like 72 hours and you end up reinfecting yourself or your teammates, even after washing this thing.
Yeah.
You
It's
know,
that normal rash guard funk. That shit's not just for show. There's some bacteria in there
So
or
this is
fungus.
something easy that we can just replace. Like you can just use cotton fibers instead of polyester fibers, and it's a better practice. So I think sometimes when it comes to this stuff where it's like, okay, this is what Olympians are doing. Yeah, you're not going to do hyperbaric oxygen therapy,
Yeah.
after your thing or get an NAD, IV, but you can make
You
your
could buy a
room
heart rate
dark.
monitor,
Yeah, you can buy a heart rate
you
monitor to
know?
make your room dark. The
Right.
so with the heart rate monitor, I want to ask you about something because I used to use a Whoop. I actually had a terrible experience with them. I'm not going to go on about it
I
right
don't use
now.
Whoop, yeah.
Ugh.
Terribly inaccurate.
Yeah, it was like saying I was burning like 5,000 calories and I was like teaching a kids class. I'm like, okay, this is hard work, but like I'm not sure
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that. Like it's not a day.
You'd be fucking anorexic, dude.
Um, I mean, I used to be really skinny. I saw some pictures of me back at
I
like
remember, bro.
COVID days, like right before we met, man. I was like, oh my God, I was like a skeleton, bro.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, with the Whoop, one of the reasons I like stopped using it, other than it being wildly inaccurate, was like I was kind of feeling like there was a little bit of a nocebo thing going on. Like I would see the data and be like, oh, I'm red today, so like I shouldn't do anything. And I otherwise felt fine, And maybe that's because it was inaccurate, but I also think, I wonder, do you think it's better for the athlete to be the one looking at the data, or should the coach have the data and look at it and kind of like almost hide it from the athlete and sort of manage it and be like, okay, this is what you're gonna do?
Man, it's so hard to answer that question because like I could tell you from like an ideal perspective and a practical perspective.
That sounds great.
From like an ideal perspective, yeah, like the athlete shouldn't have to think about that stuff. The
Yeah,
athlete should only be thinking about practice and sleeping
train.
and eating. That's it. Like just train. You know,
Eaty,
like uh
sleepy, trainy.
like if they could have like their plate full of food, like macros weighed out and measured, whatever, like
Yeah.
all of that handed to them. But ideally, that's the best case scenario, and all they focus
Hmm.
on is training, and they have assistance for everything else, obviously, But and then like the problem with coach is that it's not a scalable activity. It's I have 100 plus students.
Hmm.
We're preparing for ADCC. I have 20 plus students preparing for ADCC plus myself. So I'm like,
Yeah.
what
That's
is
brutal.
what
When
is
it's
John
you and
doing
them,
throughout his?
oh my, oh man.
Yeah,
I
I'm
go through that all the time.
deprioritizing myself 100%. But then I have to think about even if I wasn't competing, there's still like 20 people there that I have to think about what's going on in their lives, what kind of
Yeah.
people are they like, what's their jujitsu look like, what do they really need to work on for in terms of their strengths, their weaknesses, what opportunities are they constantly missing? There's so many things to consider, and I have to think about this for 20 different people on top of everything else going on in my life.
Yes.
So realistically, like I can't manage that. Like I have to tell my students to get a heart rate monitor, and I could like during class I could
Yeah.
talk to them and try to give them some insights, but they have to kind of manage that stuff themselves. Now, when it comes to my higher level athletes, like if I had
But
someone,
even if they're managing, sorry to interrupt, but even if
no,
they're
no, you're good.
managing it themselves, you're still out there providing them the information on all these things. You go on Ground Game Theory's Instagram, there's carousels with breakdowns of all of this stuff. So, you know, like I think you're doing more than the average coach to make sure your students at bare minimum have access to the tools, which I think, that's important, And then when it comes to higher level athletes, like you were saying, you're gonna be more invested, right? Because it's a closer relationship.
Yeah, but it's funny you say that because like. It's frustrating. Like for example, I try to help my students with what we were talking about earlier with like staff. So I made a post. God damn, I'm fucking blurry again, bro. Whatever.
The curse of the blur.
Whatever. We'll power
It's
on through.
okay. You're still credible, even though your image is a little blurry.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. All right, so like I made a post on that I ended up collabing with Standard on because there's a lot of stuff I got from most of the stuff I at least initially learned from Greg where I learned about how polyester holds on to and synthetics in general they hold on to staph and fungus much longer than cotton fibers.
Yeah.
And I learned about, how like, the moisture barrier really protects the staph from breaking in. So you want to reduce the amount of cuts and moisturize after every time you shower, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I made and it was a post to deter from most antibacterial and antifungal stuff. Now, nobody in my school read that. They all coming in smelling with their rash guards, smelling funky. And I gave like guidelines on how to do your laundry so that doesn't happen. Like buy laundry disinfectant, cook it at a higher heat. Like
Yeah.
if it smells, don't wear it. But they
Just get rid of
still,
it. Yeah.
they come in with like skin like a skin infection and they just hop on the mats like
Yeah.
clueless as fuck. I'm like, what are you doing, bro?
It's so
Get up.
frustrating.
Um, and then so like I try to provide them all these resources, but do they access them? What percentage of them access them? I don't really know. It's really
Yeah.
hard to get buy-in.
It's
Really hard.
frustrating because people, like there really are best practices and like since like, another one is like just to put this out here and this isn't medical advice, this is just, what I do and how what works for me is like not using miripressine as a first line
Bro,
antibiotic and instead going with
Jesus.
clindamycin, benzoyl peroxide, like that it's going to reduce the instances of the resistant bacteria that then you end up needing to use oral antibiotics, which wipe out your gut biome,
Uh-huh.
and then you end up getting staph. You get
Over and
colonized and you get
over
staph
and
over and
over
over
and
again. You have to do
over
the
and over.
decolonization. Oh,
Yeah.
it's the worst.
I see it
So
all the time.
I really wish people would just take this stuff seriously and follow these practices, because since I've switched over to like majority cotton fibers, I use Safeguard soap and then I moisturize my skin after, training. And when I do get something, it's usually because something happened that disrupted that best practice.
Yeah.
Like I had a terrible leak in my apartment and there was like you couldn't shower because the plumbing was out and stuff. So
Yeah, yeah.
it just messed up the timing of everything for a week or two. And then like, I started to notice my skin getting crazy. I was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, yeah.
So, if you follow these things, you can really reduce the instances of it.
100%. I mean, it's simple stuff like change your soap. Don't get anything that's too harsh. Get some like gentle soap. Moisturize after training. Those mats, those textured mats with the grooves, they just collect bacteria and it just festers there. It does
Yeah.
you that's not the mopping does not take care of that. So,
Yeah, it's tough.
yeah, it's a rough situation there.
Another question I have for you, before you got converted, right?
Yeah, I'm on the dark side now.
Yeah, before you were converted to the Eco Bro
I'm an eco bro.
coalition, yeah. Um, you used to do a lot of study of instructionals,
Oh
like
yeah.
a ton. Do you still study instructionals? Do you study anything? Do you
No,
watch
yeah, I
anything?
study all the time,
So
but
what does that look like now when like
just watch
compared
matches.
matches?
Just watch matches.
How
Yeah.
do you find and like what's the process with a match? Because there's just a lot of ways. Like, I can like let's say I'm studying, sumo. I could just watch sumo and I'll get something out of it. It's kind of enjoyable, but I also can like sit there, go like slow it down, start looking at, so what's your process like when you're studying?
Yeah, I don't have a process. I just watch what I like. I watch a lot of wrestling. I watch
Well, that's another
because
thing is getting outside of jujitsu, right? Like sometimes
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
lot
yeah.
more interesting. It's just like
Right.
like I want
Uh,
to watch these two guys fighting with machetes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think the first problem like with the CLA stuff that I wanted to solve was just becoming more immune to novelty. So if someone
Mm.
throws some random funky 10th planet move at you, you don't have to.
Sleeveless Ezekiel.
Yeah, yeah, like yeah, nothing is specific, but just some random technique. I'm traumatized, bro.
I was wearing a 10th planet rash guard. I'm not a 10th planet guy.
Yeah, man. So I don't want that to happen to my students. So I try to get them prepared for those things. Which is why I try to watch like a bit of everything because I wanted to see the most obscure positions you might end up in, and
Yeah,
even outside of like the traditional movements you see in jiu-jitsu.
totally.
So, but I actually, I think early on I tried to avoid like watching instructional. I don't want actually I still don't watch instructionals, but I do catch myself like on Instagram like scrolling by some demonstrations of certain movements or techniques and I'm like, "Oh, that's something I haven't tried. Let's try that." It's just like a different thing just like when I show my students, all right, we're trying to clear arms to get to the legs, or I'm trying to get his hands to the floor. I visually demonstrate how like you drill it.
Yeah.
I just don't do it for reps, but I visually
Yes.
demonstrate how it could look. So when I see those things on Instagram, those like 10-second clips of how a different grip might lead to something, I'm like, okay, that's something I could try. Not that it's gonna necessarily help me, but it gives me some
Yeah.
different potential solutions that I can use to explore myself. But just really like a lot of wrestling based stuff because I think that's more where the sports heading. That's what I've been
Yeah.
watching a lot
Yep.
more. Um,
I love the groundwork in wrestling. I'm fascinated by like leg
Folk
riding,
style.
Nelsons, and yeah, just all of it. Like I've been studying a lot of that stuff, how to pin and different things and different rides. I mean, I think that stuff's really interesting and it's a really rich framework to work submissions in and out of. I think
Yeah.
that's kind of like maybe one of the new frontiers with grappling.
A lot of my games end up just being mostly just wrestling, like pin both shoulders flat for 3 seconds. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
No, it makes sense.
yeah.
So when like with game design, it's funny because we see some interesting things like, you saw the video where people were holding like tennis balls,
I've seen many of those actually. Yeah.
types
Those are
of
funny.
things,
Oh,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah. The most recent one.
maybe
Yeah.
maybe you could talk a little bit
You-
about because
You're talking about the one at Wagner's.
I think it was
It
I
was
can't
at
even remember
Wagner's.
where that was like some white gym. Oh yeah, it's back.
Yeah, it's
Um,
Wagner's.
like part of me is like, oh, that's neat, right? Because sometimes it's good to force something. Like
Yeah.
I was trying to get somebody to roll straight the other day. Like, we have to do shoulder rolls in our curriculum. It's not something that like, I didn't put it there, but it's part of it. It's not the worst thing to know how to do. Um, but it can be really hard for some kids who aren't coordinated to do that. Like there's no constraint on the movement. They're just expected to move their body in space in a specific way, and that's really challenging for some kids because there's no like stimulus other than me talking to them to
Yeah.
make them want to do it. And I put him up against a wall and I stood there and I was like, okay, now you got to roll. And
Yeah.
like roll in this space, and he was able to roll, get his hips over his shoulders because of the constraint. So sometimes I feel like forcing the constraint is good, but my immediate thought was like, man, we're like losing a lot of representativeness here. So I'm just curious, like, what did you think when you see stuff like that?
Well, I talked to Greg about that kind of stuff a little bit, and it kind of reminds me of what I did early on. Like I
Hmm.
was I didn't use external things like that, but
Yeah,
I was constraining things just like we were talking about earlier. I was constraining things just to constrain them, just because
yeah,
I didn't really know how to use CLA.
yeah,
And I'm like, okay, well, what can I take out of the equation, and how would it look like if I did that? Um, and some people would bring in like poker chips and tennis balls and different external things, but that's really what you're gonna, at least in my view, that's really what you're gonna end up attuning to, those external objects.
yeah. Cal Jones really chewed me out. I had this idea for Tamiki Aikido because we do like these stabs, and it's very timing based. And I thought maybe you could use a metronome to make the timing of the stabs regular. And he's like, well, then you're just gonna attune to the metronome. And I'm like,
Right.
man, I feel so dumb right now.
Well, that gets me thinking because he uses place markers, like you're tuning to place markers, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's a little
Right.
bit of
So
an
that's just another
inconsistency
external
there.
object,
I didn't even think of that. Yeah, that's a
right?
good question. I gotta.
You
That's a
know?
very, very good point.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so with Yeah, that's so interesting. It it's
Like
really t
I think it's like you're heading in the right direction. It looks cool, like to your point, it was interesting.
yeah.
Um, it's definitely cool for an Instagram video, and it's coming from it's a step closer to I mean, as long as we're doing more live work, I'm with it. I think that's better than mindless reps.
He's always done that type of stuff a long time ago before the CLA craze started.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was training there and he was like, "Okay, we're gonna do this game now where, you have to step on my feet." Like, and he just had me trying to step on his feet and he was
yeah.
trying to step
Right.
on my feet. And then there was another one where like we were trying to touch behind the knee. And then we did another thing where like it was like trying to get 3 points of contact with our feet and one with the hand and pushing and pulling. And it was interesting because he was doing that stuff beforehand. And the way he framed it was that he was watching people who were good at guard and he wanted to try to imitate what their behavior.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you would stumble upon almost the same exact thing, kind of just left to your own devices.
Yeah, I remember playing like wrestling based games back in high school too. They just didn't know what CLA was. They're just like, all
Yeah.
right, we're gonna fucking try to get the shirt behind his back, try to tag the legs.
Man, that's one thing that
Yeah.
really grinds my gears is like when people say that they were doing CLA before CLA was invented. I'm like, you could have stumbled upon like one thing, but there is no way you had this systematic framework that was just
Right.
invented like a
You still
couple of
drilled,
years ago.
right? You still did drilling every day for like 45 minutes. So
Yeah.
that doesn't sound like CLA to me.
So funny. Um, One question I have is like, what is like when you talk about like skillful constraint, like versus just random constraint? Because some of these tools, even just like something not so skillful in our eyes, like just technique, right, is like powerful. You show somebody a rear naked choke, they choke somebody, they sleep. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's powerful, right? But constraints can be even more powerful, even if they're not used that skillfully. But how do you, when it comes to jujitsu and grappling, how do you start? What's been your progression in terms of what do you feel like makes the constraining you do now in the games that you make more skillful than what you did in the past?
Yeah, man. I mean, like we're all just trying to read the science, interpret it, and do our best. So I'm guessing, just doing my taking my best guess. But when I say skillful, when we're talking about skillful versus just like a random constraint, a random constraint would just be like me creating an interesting game just because it's interesting, or me copying someone else's game because it's interesting. So, for
Mm.
example, like
That's a big one, like plug and play.
right, and I don't think that there's an issue with that as a starting point. You could definitely start there and like observe what's happening and see how that
It's actually
helps or
good as a
doesn't help.
starting point because
It
you need a
is
starting point.
100% like you don't really know exactly what you're doing, but you know other people have done it. You could try something, but you always have to, take it with a grain of salt and be willing to pivot. So like someone might see, you've probably seen this game that Greg plays where you start belly up, foot to head, and you both have like a 2-on-1 on the foot, and you're just battling for height, trying to get hands locked around the hips or take the back or submit,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yep.
Which is like the whole point of that game is to keep things unscripted and uncooperative, just keep it random. That's the intention of that game.
It's trying to create scrambles. It's trying to
Right.
get you out of the typical positions while still pursuing a certain specific path towards a
Correct.
positional
Starting from a
dominance.
very unique position.
Yeah.
So like I could look at that game and bring it into my room and just because I saw it and it looked cool. But is that really what my room needs right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do they
Yeah.
need to be
Yeah.
like, or do they need to be just learning how to lock hands around the hips? Like,
Yeah.
what level are they at? What are they really struggling with? So like, what
Yeah,
would
I like to
drive
do
the most value?
diagnostic games. Like I'll start a training session like that with something like a basic circles game or just like maybe like say let's do takedowns only or first point wins, something that's
Hmm.
not like something very open, almost just positional training, and then see what people are really where am I exploiting them? What's happening? Or what are they doing to each other? What are they missing? And then going from there as a way to jump into, a CLA session if I feel like I don't
Yeah,
know where people are at.
for sure. Yeah, Greg says it all the time, but it doesn't matter where you start; it's about where you go. So
Yeah.
you can start wherever, but you have to observe the room, see what's happening, and then you have to. adjust from that. You can't just keep going in a random direction. Or you can, but it's probably not going to help your room very much, you know?
Let's do like I want to kind of ask you about a couple different positions and how you'd approach training them.
Sure.
And then maybe we can talk a little bit about techniques because I think there's something, to discuss there. But let's go first with something that people are always whining about. So like inversions and berimbolos, how do you approach getting people to utilize those options, right? Those are affordances that are present in the field of jiu-jitsu. How do you get people to utilize those without giving them explicit instruction in those techniques?
Well, if I feel like they're not really solving the problem because they're not trying enough different routes, maybe like they're just sitting up and they're not trying to commit to their back, they're constantly, I don't know, like whatever the problem may be. If I feel that inversions would help them solve whatever problem I'm trying to solve, or that I just want them to explore a different solution, maybe, then I would start them as close to that as possible. So, like,
Hmm.
where do you commonly see inversion? So, for example, Kiss of the Dragon.
Yeah.
You can have them start as close to the inversion as possible, where
And
they're
that also comes from the frames being extended, right? Like the frames are really outstretched in those positions, like it's the
right.
dragon, the berimbolo.
Like in that situation, I'm trying to get my head underneath your hips, right?
Yeah.
And if you have, if you're on top and you're able to stiff arm my shoulders and my head and stop the head from getting underneath you, I'm not going to be able to invert. So maybe I'll start with like already a frame underneath the armpit, and I'll
Yeah.
have like the Kiss of the Dragon position. So I have like a reverse de la Hiva hook and already like a scoop grip on the leg. And like
Hmm.
maybe the goal is just you want to complete you want to get behind the knees. And
Yeah.
just because we start here doesn't mean we have to stay here. And maybe I'll demonstrate like I'm trying to go like reverse de la Hiva, and they're like stuffing, they're like stiff arming my face, and then I go reverse de la Hiva towards the backside, like towards like a matrix,
Yeah.
and then I go
It's very interesting
back.
because just like everything else, right?
Right.
we we hear about this and people talk about it, and the berimbolo is interesting, like the delahiva knock 'em down invert, that particular maneuver is interesting because it's kind of like one move, right?
Hmm.
Like you essentially have a delahiva and you just invert hard around the corner. If you do it
Yep.
all hard enough, you knock them down, spin around. They're like, it's just a big spin through, right?
A
But it's
big
one
spin. Yeah.
maneuver. Very rarely do people hit that in one clean shot. Most of the time, what happens is you have a series of positions: crab ride, matrix, reverse delahiva, kiss of the dragon, regular berimbolo, baby bolo. All of these things are chopped together to allow you to take the person's back. It's not you're chasing the back intuitively through all of these positions, and then after the fact, people are like, "Oh, what'd you do here?" And people go put a name on it. So, with what you're saying, I'm almost thinking like, "Hey, let's just start in crab ride, get
Yeah.
people to build a deep attractor well of crab ride, and then just put them in front of somebody. Say, okay, get your crab ride. How
For
can you
sure.
get it? How can you get there?
Yeah.
Like."
Start them crab ride and work backwards from there.
Yeah, I think it's actually interesting because it's people put it out there as this is just such a huge challenge for the CLA framework, but it's actually really straightforward.
Yeah.
Now I know it's not your
I've
special.
had people
Oh, go
start
ahead.
even inverted in like the berimbolo position, and I'm like, all right,
Yes.
we're fighting to stay behind the knees or trying to get the knees towards the floor and take the back. Both of us are essentially doing the same thing,
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
you know?
That's fascinating. Another one that I'm curious about, and I know this isn't your specialty, but I kind of just want to test your brain here. This is like a game show right now. Is MMA. What would you do? You have somebody they wanna do MMA. Like, how do you train them in this framework for that?
Yeah, I've talked about this quite a bit with my MMA coach. So number one, you have to consider like, uh, so we're talking about MMA fighters, like they're training to compete
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be that level. Let's just say, like, you want somebody to have a decent level of skill so that they could, use MMA style
for
fighting to
sure.
defend themselves. Or, they don't have, maybe, let's say amateur. They're going to do one
They're tra
amateur fight,
Okay. They're
you
training
know?
every day. That's the more important thing. So if they're training every day, the first thing you have to consider is longevity,
Yeah.
right? So like that's the centerpiece.
Hmm.
Safety and longevity,
Mm.
Everything has to work around that.
And that's mainly the CTE element. Like we're
That
not,
is it. You
it's
can't be
probably
taking.
not like people jumping guard or Connie Basami gonna break their leg. We're more talking about
That's
like,
easy work. That's easy
yeah,
work. Just no falling body weight, no jumping stuff in the room. But like for day-to-day training, you cannot be just banging each other's heads in.
yeah,
So something that I prefer as a replacement to most pad work, bag work, that sort of thing, just things that are non-resistant, is
yeah.
games where instead of hitting to the head, you hit towards the shoulders. So you hit towards
Hmm.
the chest, the shoulders, the body, the flanks. So you're basically every all training is sparring, but
Hmm.
for most of training, we take the headshots out of the equation. And even when we add the headshots into the session, maybe we just do like an unconstrained sparring session,
Yeah,
or at the end of class we do it. We still keep it playful. There's no reason why
yeah,
we should be knocking each other hard in training.
yeah.
It's just not worth it in terms of safety and longevity.
Yeah, that's
So
been my experience with striking is like, um, it's weird because I'm almost, I came into jiu-jitsu being a pretty experienced striker and like, my experience was that like if I wanted to train with high level people that basically one of us would have to get hurt.
yeah,
That I was either going to hurt them or they were going to hurt me. And, I just was like, man, this isn't really what I'm about. Like I'm not
not a
trying to
fun
just
game to play.
punish people for, I mean, I remember a few times we were just in the gym and just because they were pros and I wasn't or whatever, like they were just like trying to put a whooping on me. And it's like, yeah, like I'm not gonna, I remember one time I was fighting with this guy, we were going at it and the coach was like, oh, you got to take it easy. You got to take it easy. I said to him, I was like, I'll take it easy as soon as this other guy takes it easy. Like, tell him to
Yeah,
calm down. Like, it's like he initiated a war. What am I gonna do? Just get beat up?
right.
So, the striking environment is really, really bad with that. And so like for me, one of the things I've done is I like to train Kyokushin style rules where they just don't really hit to the head. You just punch and kick all to the body. And there's issues with it. People talk all about this thing with training scars, which sounds a lot like muscle memory to me. And also, I will say, as someone who's competed in many different rule sets, I never have trouble not breaking the rules. It's just, it honestly,
Yeah.
for me personally, is a non-issue. Like I'm not, I just feel like I'm not an idiot and I know where I am and what I'm doing. I'm not going to suddenly just start doing jujitsu in a sumo competition.
Well, the way I see it is like you can use that time to not spar and instead do pad work or bag work, but you're tuning to that. At
Yeah.
least you in this kind of training, you have a resisting body, someone who's trying to parry and strike back, someone who's trying to block your shots, even if it's not towards the head. They're trying to block your kicks. A bag is not going to do that.
I also
Out,
think once you develop the ability to resist the strikes, like you can easily move your hands up to your head and then use your blocking skills to cover your head and worry a little bit less about your body.
yeah, 100%. I mean, and to further answer your question, my bias would be to make the MMA program more grappling focused. So
Mm,
like striking as it leads to closing the distance, also for longevity. Because if you
yes.
could close the distance, you're not going to be taking such wild shots from
It's
a
a
distance.
higher percentage option for winning fights. I mean, I think we saw this with GSP, with Khabib,
Yeah.
right? Like that they were able to consistently win fights over and over and over again by using strikes to cover the distance, get a hold of the other person, bring them down, stay on top. I mean, it's the best that's the bet your best option for fighting in a safe to grapple scenario with a single opponent. It's the way to go.
It's a tale as old as time.
That's funny.
But
Oh, you have one more?
no, yeah, I was just gonna say like and then like the grappling portion of stuff, that'd be easy. That's the fun stuff, like,
Yeah.
pinning work up against a wall, trying to circle out and away from the wall, building up using the wall as assistance, like just
Mm.
trying to make the groundwork more about getting to your feet as opposed to playing this old school jiu-jitsu game. Like come into my guard, I'm gonna triangle choke you. Like no, there's like very little business being on bottom. You want to get
I
up.
don't think that that has that much of a role even in jiu-jitsu anymore. I think that
Fair
like if you
point.
take athletes like Dorian, right? Like if you look at the match where Dorian beat Gianni, that Gianni essentially lost because he was committed to staying on his back and playing guard, and that with someone who doesn't want to engage and is on top of you, like they can, it's not that they don't want to engage as a staller. I just mean that they don't want to let you engage their legs, right? So they can
Yeah.
prevent you from entangling the legs and get around your legs because they have more mobility because they're standing.
Yeah.
So, I think that unless the key is we have to be willing to wrestle up, right? Like there has to be if you are playing guard, you have to be invested in the wrestle up.
Yeah, Dorian's a tricky one because like you can't if you stand up with him, how are you gonna take him down? If you play guard against him, how are you gonna how are you gonna do anything to him? How are you gonna
My
entangle him,
thinking
maybe
is with
pull you, how are
somebody
you gonna
like
knock him
him, you
down?
wrestle up towards a single leg, something like that. Be conscious of front headlock, and then you have to fall back onto the leg with great attachment, right? Like
with with uber great attachment.
you've achieved the
Hold on to
attachment
both
in the
legs.
process of wrestling up, right? And then you have to come back down with that attachment because tactically, you're not going to be able to take him down.
Right. Yeah, I think like I was saying earlier, I think that's what we're gonna see a lot more of in the future.
Yeah, it's an interesting development. And then, so this one's probably way out of your wheelhouse, but tell me, how would you design games for something like, let's say, sumo wrestling?
Oh, that's fun. Easy. Just I'd probably start with just create a circle. Get the start in the center. Start with connections. Your first goal is to start pushing them out of bounds. And then I would find like interesting ways to do that. Like maybe it's just like you're starting close to the end. And your goal is to just not fall out of bounds, and you're just trying to circle hard because maybe that's an issue that people have, where when they get pushed to the corner, how do you deal with
Yeah.
those late stage wins? Like, how do you like go into lat
Yep.
drops? How do you circle back in? So I'll
Like
start
starting in preconditions of those late stage
exactly,
positions.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That'd be super cool.
yeah. So like start something simple, just like okay, let's see how you guys are just pushing each other out of bounds. How does that look? And then get more complex from there.
Sumo's interesting in like the way that they train. Like, it's super archaic. Mongolian wrestling too. They have some. It's not that I don't mean archaic is it bad. It's just like a very different paradigm.
Right,
Um, like they'll do like thousands of body weight squats, and like just like dead pushing drills and stuff. And my question for you is like, how much of that stuff do you think is just like a talent graveyard and it's just the best sumo wrestlers are the guys that can survive all of that stuff they do versus like I look at a lot of this stuff that a lot of CLA people just will immediately like hate certain things, and I'm like, what if that's like more like it's weight training? Like even some of the live drilling we see, the dead drilling we see in jiu-jitsu where people are like shuffling somebody's legs back and forth really fast. Some of those things will get you so tired. Like
right,
if the point is just to get you tired, then I don't really personally have a problem with it. If the point is to get you good at jiu-jitsu, it's stupid.
right.
So my question is, do you think that maybe some of that stuff plays a role in their body development, or is it just that's talent graveyard? They're just hurting themselves, kind of like what most MMA people are doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not an expert at strength and conditioning stuff, but that sounds like what it really that sounds like the benefit that you're getting out of it. You're getting some strength and conditioning out of it as opposed to real skill development for the sport itself. Am I wrong there?
No, I mean that's my thinking about around it, but it's just so hard because in combat sports and martial arts, those things have been conflated for so long, right? Like
Right, yeah.
in in karate, you have a kata, right? And the kata has strength and conditioning elements, it has fighting elements, it has cultural elements. It's like it has all these things in it, it's sort of like a condensed soundbite of the art, but at the same token, it's not a great means for passing on information. So it's just very challenging because in martial arts you have a mixture of both aesthetic and what do you say, like functional pursuits, right? So like in combat sports like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, generally we see mostly functional pursuits. A
Right,
little bit when you talk about like why are the rules the way they are, like why is guard pulling not penalized? Like that's a little bit aesthetic, I think. I think we're starting to talk about what people want to see from jiu-jitsu, right? Rather than just grappling.
right,
Um, but in most martial arts, we really see like this huge this mixture between the two, right? Like you have both it needs to look this way, and we actually want it to look this way when you're fighting, and then also like we want you to win, right? And a
right.
lot of times those things are at odds.
What martial arts are aesthetics a necessary thing? Like
Um, Karate, Wing Chun,
but in karate, isn't just like if I kick you in the head and you get knocked out, I win, right?
It depends on the style and the approach, but I mean like in the sense that the way that these arts are practiced, when you like let's say test for a black belt or whatever,
Right,
you have to demonstrate elements of a curriculum that are going to be purely aesthetic, like a kata, right?
right,
Even in judo, for example, like there are ways to just achieve your black belt through competitive a competitive track, but there also are like testing tracks where you
right.
have to
But the
demonstrate certain things.
yeah, the aesthetic, yeah, I mean that would be just like to appease the tradition, right? Like
Yes.
because
Yeah. I don't think that these things actually have a functional role towards developing people's ability to do them in fighting. The only thing I advocate for it in the sense is that martial arts has an academic component, and from the perspective of scholarship, it makes sense to preserve the techniques that are popular in a given era. Um, if there's a way to compartmentalize that information differently and like have it be like these are the things people were into, like everyone was taking the back through inversions as opposed to saying like the berimbolo was really popular and then like locks got popular. We could talk about however you want, but I think that there is an element in martial arts where we try to um, create like a record of that,
right,
if that makes any sense.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
And that ends up being aesthetic, right? Like it has to look that way if you're going to do it. I don't think it's necessary to practice entirely, especially with the advent of video, right? But katas come from a time before they had video.
is it similar that in jiu-jitsu, like let's say karate to jiu-jitsu, that these katas are named based off slight variations? Like there's
Yes,
theoretically
yes.
like
Everybody does it
tons of yeah,
differently. Everybody thinks their way of doing it is right.
right.
And everybody thinks they have yeah, yeah, 100%, right? There is
Yep.
no one thing
That's
always.
way too messy, man.
It's
It
no,
just sounds like
it's
a broken system to me.
no, it isn't a great way of transmitting information. And some of the leading people now, what they've moved towards is like this thing called like there's a really good instructor who does this thing called principle driven skill development. And it's
Mhm.
like almost a lot of it is small one or two step constraint based games. It's
Right.
really similar to CLA, and it's challenging because for me with a lot of arts, I feel like my role isn't to change what's being done. Like I just you have to achieve a certain level in it before you can do that. So I don't necessarily go to do that and say like, judo or something like that. So you have to sort of participate in the system as is until you reach a certain level, and then you can say, hey, I think this would be a better way to do this.
Unless you go the cowboy route like I did and just foot sweep the shit out of everybody and be like, "What's up, dog?"
So funny. It's
Like,
cool.
how long have you been doing judo? Psh, dog, not playing.
I've been training judo forever. It's been like 12 years
Yeah, yeah.
or even longer. I mean, but I was regularly training for a while at a dojo, but then it just there became this whole thing about like I was using too much strength. And it's
Can't
like
use your strength,
I'm
you can't use
I'm
your
doing the
flexibility, you can't use your skill.
techniques. I'm doing the technique, but it's too strong, and there's just not very much I can do about that. I don't plan on getting weaker, I don't plan on not using my strength when I'm fighting. I would love to use more technique and more Kazushi and all that good stuff, but I'm not going to be weak, So I felt like there was just sort of like a philosophical disconnect. I don't really want to train with people who are going to be like telling me like, hey, like you can't do the strength training that you need to do to be successful in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Sumo, all
Yeah.
the things that I'm Chinese wrestling, all the things that I'm doing and I am successful in. And then I also was competing very regularly and not like I'm a green belt in judo and I was competing at brown belt and winning and I like, like, not really looking at me for promotions. So I just was like, this isn't really worth my time. I can just practice on my own.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would do the same.
Yeah, it's just not. I was driving pretty far to do it. Just ended up not being worth it.
I'm like just on a personal level, I'm very anti-authority, so I can't stand that. I can't stand
Also,
it.
like, hold on, wait. I'm gonna make you throw up in your mouth. So
Okay.
it's like an hour and a half practice. We would spend the first like 30 minutes doing like jumping jacks, running in circles,
So fun.
shuffling, bear crawls, rolls, back falls, break falls, this, that, the other thing. Then we'd spend like about like 3 minutes or 4 minutes drinking water because everybody was so tired from that. And now like this is a 90 this is it's an hour and 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And then they would show a move and oh no wait, I'm sorry, we would do uchikomi, which is the craziest thing from the CLA perspective, right? Like you do half of a throw in a way that you would never do it really fast back and forth. Like it's
Like
really
speed
silly.
drills.
Yeah, but it's really bad. You gotta, if you don't know what it is, you gotta go look it up after this. You're gonna freak
Okay.
out, right? So we do like 100 of these. It'd take another like 10 minutes. Then they show a move. We would practice the move a couple of times, not even a lot of times, right? And then show another move. This is like, so we're now like an hour and 10 minutes into class. We would do like 2 or 3 rounds and then cool down stretch. So in 90
Amazing.
minutes of class, we would do like maximum like 15 to 20 minutes of randore.
Yeah.
And like, that to me, that usage of time, I'm just going, oh my God, man, like this is like I could get so much more judo in.
People are wasting that kind of time in 60-minute classes.
Yeah.
You know, they're wasting
It's
45 of it or
I mean,
more
you had a great
sometimes.
post on this. I think it was called like the hidden cost of drilling.
Oh yeah. Right. I did the numbers.
I mean that's beyond the if you want to be really good, there are some tactical costs to being a driller. Like I like rolling with those people who have studied a lot of instructionals and stuff because I know exactly I like instructionals, I watch them and I know what they are on and I know what they're not on. So I like to take it to a place where it's okay, this is not a thing that they talk about and you don't know what to do with it and you're so reliant on that framework that now you're gonna freak out, you know?
I've realized that like I've seen a lot of instructionals and a lot of them is kind of like regurgitate the same thing with like, okay,
Yes.
now I'm showing this grip. Now I'm showing this grip. Now here's another way. Here's another way. Like this whole obsession with whenever we play like leg lock games or even if we're just focusing on ankle locks in a leg entanglement round. People are always like, "Oh, but can I Aoki-lock? Oh, but can I Woj lock him? Oh, but I'm like, dude, like if I say ankle lock, like I'm attacking ankle. I explain you're pointing the toe, keeping the knee bent. We're trying to rotate and compress as we try to get the knee to the ground. Like if the heel pops out or not, still going for the
Yeah.
same move.
I
It's
think
not
it's
all of a sudden
also
something different,
frustrating because you want people to understand the constraints of the game and then decide for themselves like, okay, does this meet the game or not?
right?
Like it's like, what did you tell them to do? Okay, well, if that is an Aoki-lock allowed under that, that's exactly the type of thing you should be thinking about and figuring out. When I was doing Chinese martial arts, I had these like really like they were just like not mean, but just mean. Like they're just cold when they'd be teaching me. It was like it's just cold. So like
Yeah.
you do the move and they're just like, no. And like 100 times. You know what I mean? It's like, no, like what do you mean? No, it's wrong. Uh but there's something to be said for like one of the things that this particular guy would say to me was like, I'm pretty sure he like invented large language learning models. Like he worked at IBM and he like built the first one and then they fired him. Um,
Jesus.
but he used to always say to me like, that's an exercise for the reader. Like I'd ask him a question, he'd be like, that's exactly what you're supposed to be figuring out by doing this.
Yeah.
And obviously with leg locks, there's a little bit of that fear factor and you want to keep people safe, but sometimes it's like, hey, like this is like go and do it and it does it fit the what I told you? That's what you got to be figuring out?
Yeah, it's frustrating because we've been doing it for years at this point. And honestly, like I realized early on I was kind of like responding to my students a little mean sometimes, at least in my perspective. Whereas
Yeah.
like they kept asking kind of stupid questions and I'd be like, "Come on, man. I just said that."
Yeah.
And I talked to myself. I'm like, I should probably just tell them even if it's ridiculous, just like tell them again if I have to. But I feel like I've done that and I've kind of babied them, and now I'm getting dumb questions like crazy. Like, all
Mm-hmm.
right, I'm either keeping, I'm passing, I'm just trying to keep my head on his shoulders. I'm using my head to flatten him out. I'm using my arms, my movement, my structure to just remove anything that could push on me. So if he pushes me with his hands, elbows, feet, knees, I'm constantly removing that and using
Yeah.
my head to flatten him out. And then they're like, but can I put my butt high? Can I put my butt low? Can I? But I saw you move this way. I'm like, dude, all I said is pin him with your shoulders and use your arms to remove everything else. Like
I think that
I
like
showed you could do both too.
so
So
this is something too where and this is one of the things I also want to talk about is techniques and language is I think that the CLA terminology, the way that we talk about the games, we use a more basic anatomical language than what's common in jiu-jitsu. And people have trouble with that, even though it's more granular and it's the words that we use in everyday life. There's a little bit of like they just are conditioned to think about these things in those, ashigarami, tripod, all these things. Like some of that is there's like a Pokemon kind of thing there, like the funny names and
right,
and
yeah,
their different shapes and it's like looking at a dinosaur book for a kid.
for sure.
Like, so I think that there's an appeal to that. And it sort of, when you introduce that other language, some people just struggle to operate in that different operating system, even if it is more basic.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know if they struggle more because I
Yeah,
remember
that's a
when we
good question. I
drilled,
think
like they,
struggle less is probably the reality.
yeah, because they struggled a lot when we drilled. They really did, and I was very clear.
No, you were super meticulous. You're as meticulous of a driller as they
Right.
get.
And it only got like more simplified because I had beginner students. So I was like, I really got my language down, at least in the room. And people they're doing well. They weren't doing bad, and we're doing a lot of situational still, but there's so much messiness. The things that we were drilling would never appear in at
Yeah,
least not at the rate that I wanted them to.
totally.
It was just such a mess. Yeah, I don't know where I was getting at with that, but
When it comes to like referring to these things and the language and all that stuff, you know, I want my students to know what things are called in the rest of the jiu-jitsu community. Do you care about that at all, or you just don't worry about it?
yeah, well, I don't care that they know, but they're gonna know about it. Sometimes I will tell them, but something that I really try to think about when I'm teaching is that focus is like a fatigable muscle.
Mm-hmm.
So the more information I give them, and the more information that's not going to directly help them with the task,
Mm-hmm.
might get them distracted from the
100%.
task. So
Yeah.
like if I tell them this is called a kiss of the dragon,
Yeah.
and I want you to do X, Y, and Z, and this and that. Like, did me telling them that this was the kiss of the dragon help them at all, or did I just kind of throw out some random information there for them?
That's a good point. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like it
Eh,
doesn't help them accomplish the task you're giving them in that moment.
yeah, less words,
Yeah.
more better,
Yeah, totally.
you
No,
know.
that makes perfect sense.
But like, so we do in my school we do Monday through Wednesdays classes, like normal class. Then, well, actually, end of the week. So since we don't have a Friday evening class, our Thursday 7 p.m. class, that's our last evening class for the week, is a Q&A session.
Mm,
So students come in, they ask, we have slots for 3 questions.
Mm-hmm.
And each question gives 2 games. And it would be
Got
like,
it.
I
That's
struggle
cool.
on holding people down when I'm in half guard. Like
Yeah.
those are the days where we talk more about what is this, what is that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
we just kind of like chat and then we play a game. We chat, play a game, chat, play a game. We really go in deep. I try to understand like what are you really struggling with because back to what I was saying earlier, like it's hard being a coach to so many different students that have so many different issues. So when I open up
Totally.
this two-way stream of communication, it becomes way easier for me to serve them not just right then and there, but next week and in the coming
Yeah, that
weeks.
makes perfect sense. That's a really good format.
It's been amazing. It's
Are
been
people
really
enjoying
really good.
it?
They love it. They love it.
That's great.
It's really good. We do it in
Um,
our 6:30 and our noon class too.
that's really cool.
Yeah.
When it comes to like take like the Jujigatami, for example, right? Like arm lock, right? But Jujigatami isn't just arm lock, right? So we're talking about straightening arms,
Hmm.
right? But we're also saying that specifically we want to straighten arms in a way where our hips are behind the elbow. So we're applying the force to the back of the elbow with our hips, right?
Right.
And that's so most people would say that's a technique, but they don't realize that it's not because it's not specific enough, right? Like there's full jujis and three-quarter jujis. There's different entries to juji. There's different ways to finish juji. And like that's usually like if you got a coach demonstrating, that's what they would show you is something super specific like that. But like one thing I'm trying to understand, and maybe you can, share your thoughts on this, is like what is the technique? And there is something there, right? Like there is a configuration there that is useful in the construction of constraints-based games, right? But it's not the same as obviously this has nothing to do with drilling, right? But
Yeah.
what is that thing? What is the Jujigatami exactly?
Right.
You get
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say? Like,
Yeah. I mean, the way I would describe it is just like the the straightening of an arm, right, with some kind of wedge behind the elbow
yeah.
that allows you to hyperextend them until you either break the arm until they tap. Now that wedge can be your hip, that wedge can be your arm, but that wedge
Well, if
has
it
to exist.
becomes the like the this part, right, then it's urigatami. It becomes a different armbar.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that those are categorically different than jujis. And that, my opinion is that that can be
But
useful.
functionally they're the same
Uh,
because
well,
functionally like you're still like right. So for an arm bar, you need something here, right? Something on this side of the wrist, on the front side, something on the back side of the elbow. There are things that
but
we can
don't you
attach to
think
the
there's
shoulder.
degrees of functionality in the sense that jujigatamis are more common and more powerful than urigatamis
Sure.
because the legs apply the force as opposed to the arms, which aren't, so
Correct, but in terms of invariance, like it's the same thing as saying like a head and arm choke with my arms versus a triangle choke with my legs. They're
yeah,
both head and arm chokes.
yes.
They're just functionally, I'm still covering carotid arteries,
But we
and
also prefer the leg triangle for the same reason we
because the
prefer
legs are stronger.
Juji.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure. And
yeah,
we could talk about that stuff all day, but like in terms of invariance, like that's what's happening in
yeah, yeah,
any
yeah.
arm lock.
Totally,
You
totally.
know, so like then from there, like we could talk about the specific different methods or different grips you can use to achieve the same function.
Yeah.
Right. And one of that, like maybe you really want your students to focus on using their legs to do it. So like this, I think with DeAndre, because I could be butchering this, but they got him really good at leg triangles because his
Mhm.
legs were really strong and they had a lot he had a lot of muscle endurance in his
Yeah.
legs and his arms were kind of shorter, so he couldn't get head and arm strangles as easily.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
they got him better at using his legs to strangle, but it's still the same thing, right? It's still the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
function,
totally.
um, just a different method or mechanics specific to the athlete.
So do you think that like these kinds of delineations that exist sort of traditionally, do you think that they're at all helpful like in the construction of the games
Hell yeah.
or
I mean for sure, but the traditions need to adapt.
yeah, totally.
100%, like lean on traditions, but you can't just use them as law because we're in a different time. There's different, the whole situation is different now. So
Well, that's the thing is like we don't need to like that's my thinking is like it's not about dictating particular grips and all of those things within Jujigatami scenario unless we're encountering a particular problem and we think that like constraining towards something like that might help somebody be more successful. But
Correct.
overall, like we're looking to see those Jujigatami scenarios emerge. Like that's a goal as a coach. And that's kind of sort of what I'm trying to get at is like I think that these general families of techniques like are can be helpful as just like signposts of like, hey, there's something interesting here that's worth exploring, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I see your point. I personally just think that there's like we talk about a specific like let's talk about the Jujikatami, hip to shoulder armbar, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, like why stop there? Why stop at just hip to shoulder? Why not talk about the specific hand grip? Like now it's a Jujikatami with the figure four grip, with the two on one, with the one on one. This is a Jujikatami where I'm tilting 45 degrees to my left or towards the head instead of towards the left.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. Like you
Well, I
can.
think the goal would be for somebody to be able to describe what they do in words, right? But they don't necessarily need the grappling terminology like through and through. Like I think we want a more plug and play terminology that allows us to just talk about these things.
Mhm.
And I think that the CLA framework actually introduces that better than even like Danaher did a pretty good job, but it's still verbose. Like
Yeah,
the CLA stuff is like layman's terms and it has the same dimensionality as what Danaher was trying to do.
yeah. I mean, I could only tell you like the way I do it, and again, it's always just a guess. But if I was like showing an armbar to like a beginner that's never seen an armbar, I would explain the invariance. So like you need something on the front of the wrist or the front of the
Yeah.
hand, however I might describe that, and you need something on the backside of the elbow, right?
Hmm.
So this is typically done with your arms or like mostly just your arms or mostly just your legs, and I'll show how that might look. Like mostly just your legs would just be like a normal Jiu-Jitsu Gatame armbar, and mostly with your arms would just be like a very arm
Violin.
like yeah, like a violin
Yeah.
armbar. But at the end of the day, these things never change. I need something here, I need something there, and so I can compress behind the elbow until the arm is straight enough and until it breaks. But then I'll be like, okay, but today I want you guys to focus on just the legs, the leg
Yes.
version. So we're gonna start here, right?
And you can do all that when you don't mention Jujikatami, which I think again it's irrelevant information.
Right, right. So like, and I always keep myself open to my students after practice. Like if you and even in between rounds, any questions on that, any thoughts, any
Yeah.
concerns, um, and I even encourage them like towards the end of practice, like guys, like I don't want you guys to force yourselves to ask me questions because that's forced. But understand that the more you can articulate the issues that you're having or the successes that you're having, the better I can serve you as a coach.
Yeah. No, that makes
Right.
perfect sense.
So I'm just constantly encouraging to do those things.
Uh,
Not
wow.
easy.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I mean, one thing that really I feel like just comes through this whole conversation is like you really are a super dedicated coach. You know, I hear over and over like, how much individualized attention that you're putting on your students, and I think that's a really cool thing. You know, you guys are really lucky that they have somebody who's actually trying to develop their game in a specific way and attuned to their needs as an individual. So, I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks again for doing this. This was great.
Thanks for having me.
I learned a lot actually. It was interesting because we went over quite a few different topics, but it gives me some new ideas and inspiration for some stuff. So thank you.
Glad to hear. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, man.
Have a good one, man. Thanks.
Yeah, until next time.